All right, hey folks, how we doing today? Hopefully you're having a good day and everything like that. We are going to get started with the second part of our form lesson, which is going to be on a new type of form, and we're going to discover what that is in just a moment. So first, let's go ahead and review. I want to take a look at binary form right here. So please remember, binary form is a type of musical form that consists of two parts. Each of the parts is labeled with A and B, being the section labels. In binary form, typically speaking, like it says right here, the A section is referred to as the theme. All right. The B section is going to then be referred to as the development. So the theme is established in the A section. Every now and again, you'll get an introduction there too, but 9 times out of 10, you are going to label the A section the theme. The B section is going to develop that theme and work some new sorts of things going on. There's a little bit more that goes into it, but we're just looking for a surface level right now. We're not going to talk about keys and where it goes and how it gets there and all that kind of different stuff. So remember, some of that vocabulary right there. A theme is a composition, the theme of the composition, I should say, is the recognizable tune. It's that thing that's going to stick in your ear, and it's what's going to be that kind of main primary. The development is going to sometimes take some ideas from the theme, it's going to work them around, it's going to be similar ish, and it's going to expand on them. It's going to develop those ideas, which is exactly where that developmental section comes from. So we're going to listen to this one more time. This is from the last lesson that we. This is just a little bit of that kind of idea of binary. Now, that, of course, was your A section of Greensleeves. Now, if you listen, we're going to move into the B section. You can hear pretty clearly that it's going to develop what's going on here. It's going to change it in some way to kind of elaborate on it. So, as you can hear in that B section, it does have a similar sort of sound to our A section. You can clearly tell that it's the same song. It doesn't get so radically different that it is something completely unknown, but it does develop those ideas. It does some different things. It moves up instead of down, or it repeats certain notes as opposed to moving around in them, or the tempo speeds up. All those structural phenomena that we talked about last time. And if you don't remember what the structural phenomena are, go ahead and head back to that last lesson, that other video, and please go ahead and take a look at that one more time. It's just a little bit too much to go into here, so we have time to get type of form. So there's your binary form. The next one is ternary form. So binary, like computer code, means two. So bi technically means two. So, binary is two different sections. Ternary, that beginning portion, is going to talk about three sections, kind of like tri or triple. Ternary means three. So it's a form that consists of three parts. Labels on this one are A to start with, as always. We usually start with A because it's the first letter of our alphabet here, and that's just where it makes most sense to start. It progresses into a B section. It can use different transitions and that we'll talk in minutes here a little bit more, but it's going to end up with a repeat of the A section. So it can be a literal repeat of the A section, or it can be what we call A prime, which is very similar to your A section. However, it does change a little bit here and there. So if there's a slightly different rhythm or it gets embellished, meaning it's adding some of those like trills or grace notes or passing tones, things of that nature, it can still be your A section as long as the primary melody stays intact. Okay. So in ternary form, A section is going to be the theme. The B is the development, and the return of the A gets its own special name, which is called recapitulation. So the recapitulation, we already know. Excuse me, back up a little bit. What we already know, the theme is the recognizable tune, and the development develops the theme and works it into some new sorts of things, changing it, elaborating. Recapitulation is the return of the theme after the development section. So you guys have heard the term recap before. Technically speaking, recap is just the shortened version of recapitulation. So it's even in regular language is talking about going over something from earlier one more time. You'll see the recap at the end of this lesson, and you've seen it at the other lessons, but I digress. So let's take a listen to this right here, this Mozart melody, and we'll kind of hear that ternary. So that was our A section. It was short. It's Twinkle Twinkle Star. We all know this one. That first opening melody where it's climbing is your A section. What we're in right now is B section, as it's starting to do that kind of falling, sort of developing. Now, as this comes back in with the A section, you will notice that there are some slight modifications to it, but you can clearly tell that it's still the same general idea as your initial A section, that recapitulation, that C. Listen to it a whole. Recapitulation. So very slight differences, right? But at the same time, it's still the same idea. It's still the same song. It still sounds like it all fits together. There's your ternary form. So now, as you saw just a moment ago, you have a little bit of a preview. We are going to get into rondo form. So this is a very interesting type of form because rondo can take a couple different um, forms, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it. We're talking about form. It can take forms, whatever. So rondo form is another type of form of music, and it typically takes one of two iterations. There is a 5-part rondo and a 7-part rondo. But regardless of the number of sections, rondo form is going to use the following labels. So you can see them right here. A, this time is called the refrain, because as we'll see, it's going to be a section that reoccurs continuously. So we'll see that in the next slide when we talk about the different types of rondo. You'll see what I'm talking about. Occasionally, you can call it the theme. However, most of the time, we call it the refrain just because it reoccurs. The B, C, and other episodes that we have in here, the different letters that we use, are called, like I said, episodes. And the sections that are going to develop the A section and provide new material are those episodes. Sometimes they can be called developmental sections. We can use those terms interchangeably. Theme for sections for episodes. But we might as well learn the right way to do this stuff too. So we'll call A the refrain, and B and C and any of the other letter name labels use the episodes. Okay? So between each of the sections, there are things called transitions and then retransitions. Now you've heard of transition before. Use it at school all the time. And I know we haven't been in school this year, but either way, you've still heard this for years. Transition is simply saying that when we from one thing to another. In this particular example, a transition is going to be when the music moves out of the A section and into either the B or C or whatever other section. So transitions are moving away from A. Okay, that's how you can remember. Transitions go away from A. A retransition is when the music moves back to A from another section. So we don't usually hear that term transition very much, but in the you know music theory and form and things like that, it is. So, like I said, make sure that you remember transitions go away from A, retransitions come back to A. Okay? Often the transition and retransition will set up the next section. What this does is it helps make the changes less abrupt. So if we're going to, change keys, for example, call that modulation. So just a random. We're not going to worry too much about that, but throw in a vocab word at modulation when you change keys. Now there are a couple different ways that you could set that up, but that's not the focus of today's lesson. If you are modulating, often what composers will do is they will use a transition or a retransition to make that change less jarring. Now, some of you have actually heard this in the music you listen to when you're listening to the song and it seems like it moves up that little chunk right there where all of a sudden they're singing higher notes or they're playing different progressions on their guitars or whatever else. That's a modulation. Sometimes we call it a key change, but it's a modulation. So the transitions and retransitions help set up the next section to make the change less abrupt. Sometimes they speed up or slow down, get louder or softer, whatever else needs to happen to make sure that those transitions are smooth. So we're going to talk about something called a 5-part rondo. So a 5-part rondo has sections that are typically formatted this. So it goes from the A section, transitions into the B section, you'll get a retransition back to the A section, another transition to C, and a final retransition back to A. Now, sometimes you can substitute in a second B section where you change B to still make it interesting in place of the C section. So you can have A, B, A, and do that way. But for my money, the most that I've seen is A, C, A, where it does a refrain and then an episode. It goes back to the refrain and does a completely different episode and then finishes up. So the reason that it's called a 5-part rondo is if you look up there, it has 5 distinct sections, and if you count those letters up there in each of those different formats, you're going to see that there are 5 pieces. There are A's, and then there are 2 other letters, which is what's going to give it that 5 parts. Because 3 plus 2 is. All right, friends. So let's take a listen to this right here. So we're going to listen to this melody, and you're going to hear those different sections, and I will call them out for you, help you out. Okay. So we're going to start off, obviously, with our A section. So let's take a listen. It's going to repeat, so it repeats. Here's the second one. Here's your first episode. though we had what's called an A prime there, where it changes a little bit at the end there, you can still very clearly hear all those different sections. And that A section, you can probably hum it right now if you want to. Bum, 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 ba-da-dum, bum, ba-da-bum. You've got that right there. So that's very clearly setting up that section. All right, let's move into our next piece right here and the 7-part rondo. So a 7-part rondo, I forgot to change this right here. I apologize. I should say 7. In a 7-part rondo, it's the same thing as a 5-part, except we add an extra 2 sections. So we have A transitioning to B, retransitioning to A, transitioning to C, retransitioning back to A one more time, or transition back to our B section, which is going to be similar, if not exactly the same. And then finally, another retransition to A. Now, a less common way, just like in our 5-part rondo, is we can substitute a D section for that final B. Sometimes this happens, sometimes it doesn't. Same thing as before. If you count the letters up there, you have 7 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. All right? So, taking a look at this one here, this Beethoven Sonata. We're almost done with this lesson, folks, so hang with me for just another moment, too. We're going to listen to this, and we're going to sections in there to hear what this sounds like. 7-part. Back to A again. You can hear it there very clearly. There's the same bass. Couple embellishments. Another transition away from A. New. So here's C. It is. So here's our A, our refrain. It comes back. So again, another A section that has some embellishment. It's okay. Still the same. Now looking at the music, we can already tell what this is do. It's back to our B section. Now a little bit of embellishment there, so this is technically a B prime, but that's okay too. Transitioning So now we have an A triple prime, where it's still the melody, but it embellishes it all. So you're probably thinking at the very end there, it doesn't really sound like A, but if you're listening really closely to those parts, it does have our A section in there. So it might be a little bit more busy than you kind of think about, but at the same time, it still works out. So very quickly here, so we don't go too much longer with this video, the recap, like I said, there it is, recap. Rondo form is another type of form of music, and it has two different configurations, 5 or 7 part rondo. The A section is typically called the refrain, and the B and C sections are called the episodes. A transition is when the music moves out of the A section and into another one, and a retransition is when it moves back to the A section from a different section. So 5 part rondo is usually configured A, B, A, C, A, and the 7 part rondo, it should say 7 there. I apologize, typo, friends. Should be A, B, A, C, A, B, A. But always remember, the section labels are determined by listening and analyzing. It's not just random. You don't just say, oh, it's usually this, so we do this. You got to listen to it and really make sure that that is making sense. All right? So, nice work with this here, folks. We're going to do a couple of self-check questions, and then we are, done for the day. All right? So, let's move on, and let's get going with the end of our lesson.